Well, good morning, everybody. I don't know about you. I was tired at the end of the day. I got a good sleep last night, so far so good. Welcome again to day 2 of the 14th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Hales. I'm the moderator for the sessions. Don't forget, all the sessions are closed captioned. We want to watch it, which I think is fun. It's all you got to do is click on the closed caption icon, bottom of the screen. We're doing a live transcription. Uh, the recordings of the session should be available shortly after the close of the day's sessions. You'll know it's available because you'll see the join session has changed to view recording. Also, don't forget, all of you have access to our complete library of sessions with now over 600 recordings from the past 13 conferences. So, today we have Amy Kuntz, Sarah Davis. Amy is an instructional designer in the teaching and learning with technologies at Penn State. She works on intensive course redesign projects and around immersive experiences. Also facilitates a university-wide learning design community. Yeah. So also we have Sarah Davis, an instructional designer in the Department of Teaching and Learning with Technology, also at Penn State. Works with a range of faculty and focused on emerging technologies and institutional initiatives such as OER, data-informed pedagogy, and digital fluency. So, without further ado, let me turn it over to Amy and Sarah.
Thanks so much, Bob, for that welcoming introduction. And hello, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about the future of faculty development, including integrating lessons learned from remote teaching and learning. So if we do have faculty in the house, this is also pertinent to you and your teaching and to considerations of your students. So in addition to my full-time role as an instructional designer, I've also been an adjunct instructor for 15 years, and most of us in our department try to teach on the side as well, just to be current practitioners of what we're doing. And I think that's so valuable and important. To kind of set the stage, this is going to be an interactive session. We'll have some polls. We'll also have some time for kind of sharing out either in the chat, or we have a collaborative document which we'll share just to set the stage. But if you want to kind of listen, that is fine too, because we want to be very respectful of your commitment today. So by the end of today's session, we really want you to think about and integrate some of our pandemic lessons learned in your own institutional context. We're also going to provide a list of examples of how to carry the innovation forward. And we'll compose some talking points of trying to get buy-in for this change and future considerations. So we will be sharing the slides for today. We'll also at the end have this link again, which will have the slides in our collaborative document. So when we think about the positive aspects, we want to think about opportunities that came about from transition to remote. These are very anecdotal, kind of from our perspective. Sarah and I are part of a team of 10 instructional designers that support Penn State. We have 24 Commonwealth campuses that are geographically dispersed in all aspects, and University Park is kind of in the center. And so our unit supports everyone, but there might be a local instructional designer at some locations, not all. So when we think about what has occurred, there was kind of 4 big areas that kind of presented itself. The first was a higher focus of online synchronous through Zoom today. And even pre-pandemic, we've utilized this because of that geographically dispersed institution that we're part of. We've always had it as an option, but some faculty were really hesitant to attend because they were not used to it. They liked kind of that in-person connections. And so now that they've experienced it and the flexibility, they really like that type of offering. And so we've really continued that moving forward. Our next part, and we'll show what this looks like, is open resources. So again, there might be local instructional designers. So we decided to create all of our resources for one of our offerings, which was called the Engaging Student Series, to be open and available for reuse. And so you will have access to that today. And so it includes a recording, our objectives, our slides, for a variety of topics. So just like this conference that has so many great resources of 600 plus recordings, we have some tailored for that kind of quick pandemic transitioning purposes. When we think about having that open pedagogy, there's some important considerations. One is accessibility, which we should always do, including the closed captioning and alt text of images. But we also have to think about licensing and fair use. So when we do workshops kind of at our institution or have it locked down behind a learning management system, it falls underneath the TEACH Act as far as content and copyright. But when we have it be open published resources that have that specific licensing, we have to make sure that it falls under fair use of copyright. So we had to think about that. The other part is images. So we have access to Adobe stock images, and so we've utilized those. But whenever we created a session for this open educational resource, we had to make sure that it was something that was Creative Commons approved for that licensing signature. We also have a bigger focus on DEI, which will go and cover towards the end of the session. So we always practice what we preach. We've kind of incorporated this both from an inclusive standpoint and always having representation of our faculty and our student body. And we really wanted to encourage others of how they could do this within their own contexts. And last but not least is increased and quick turnaround time of feedback on sessions. So we always have evaluation of our individual sessions and our programs, including feedback surveys and much more. But we always kind of had a couple months to take that data, see what trends there were, and implement it. Because of that quick succession of sessions, we had to really say, okay, well, what topics were identified that faculty want? How could we create these quickly? Or, okay, they like this part of the session, how can we replicate that in our other offerings? Or they wanted to add this topic to the session, so next time we offer it, let's try to incorporate that. So to show you what we mean by online synchronous, we have collaborative activities, and see, these are just some examples, which we'll do a quick little video. And so for that example, one of those was the annotation feature. So we're not using it today within our session, but we sometimes would have over 50 to 100 faculty participate. And so we had polling questions, chat discussions, and more. But we also had this annotation feature where they could go and place where they thought of opinions. It could be icebreakers, it could be something like this, where we thought, hey, do you think the lectures should be synchronously through Zoom or asynchronous through Canvas, which was our learning management system? And it was across the board. And you could see that that's okay. And we had that as part of conversations. The next one is our open pedagogy example. And so Sarah is great, put it in the chat for us today. As you can see here, we have that Creative Commons licensing. And so if you go ahead and click on the book and read it, you could see our topics. They were kind of in order of first offering. We've done a lot more since then. So in addition to engaging students through synchronous and asynchronous activities and multimedia assignments and assessment, we have some unique features. So if you are now in a situation where you have to present to students in person in the classroom as well as an online audience at the same time. That's what we mean by mixed audience. And so we have a couple sessions on that, as well as things like time, too much or not enough, making sure the time that students spend on the course is equitable. And two, we're adding to this. So we're adding another diversity, equity, inclusion session. I'm doing it actually tomorrow and Thursday. So that will be added in a week or two once we get closed captioning and everything up to speed. So now we have a question kind of for you, and we actually have a collaborative notes document to take these. And we want to hear from you. How did your offerings change as we transitioned to all remote teaching and learning? And did you survey faculty about the programming they attended? And if so, how? So Sarah put in the chat our collaborative note document, and we see that a bunch of you are already in there, which is great. And we'll revisit this throughout today's session. So if you want to go ahead and answer these questions in the document or in the text chat instead, we could make sure that those get transferred over. So feel free, or since we have, if you're very passionate about something and you want to raise your hand, we could go ahead and unmute you. So we'll give it a few seconds to see if anyone wants to chime in. I know it's probably early in the morning, so we're prepared in case this is not a very chatty group today. So one thing is they did a needs assessment via Microsoft Forms to gather data on what their instructors needed. That's great. And so while others are typing, I'll just even kind of give a little bit more context to our situation at Penn State, which was I was actually at our what's called Penn State Abington, which is in Philadelphia. And so I was there that Thursday, and we thought everything was kind of as is. There was kind of rumblings of, hey, what's going on? And then that weekend, we kind of got the call on Saturday saying, hey, we're moving to remote. And Sunday morning, we offered consultations. I remember we did a 13-hour day of consultations. So lots of coffee. And we kind of hit the ground running with consultations and then tried to do that. And I think we'll address how we overcame that and how we transpired throughout. Awesome. So thanks so much, everyone. So we offered 0 remote teaching prior to the pandemic. For me, I took things they already did and how to do that in an online environment, that comparison. Then over the summer, I was able to give them real universal design course development training. That's great. Thank you. Shortened our workshop sessions to 30 minutes to have very focused topics. We actually kind of did the opposite. So that's interesting. I had 2-hour sessions of our engaging student series. So it's always neat to see different approaches. Another is we began offering more online sessions and providing links to the recordings. And so that's, I think, great. And implementing many new tools, especially for student retention and accessibility. And I think that definitely continues through this day. And a different one was, unfortunately, our change was slow. Too many professors just dumped their course and assumed students would engage, and that did not happen. And so then the lessons learned of, okay, let's actually go ahead and see how we could do that. And feel free to continue to contribute. This is going to be a resource for all of us to share and utilize afterwards. So please continue to post in there. So moving on, I'm going to pass things over to Sarah to talk about some of our teaching strategies.
Thanks, Amy. So before we get into the things that we did at Penn State, we wanted to talk a little bit or gather a little bit of information from you about what course modalities are currently being offered at your institution for spring 2022. So if you go ahead and go to slido.com and enter the number that you see on the screen there, you can participate in this pool. So we're curious to see whether your current offerings are similar to what you had in pre-pandemic, or similar to what was happening, at the onset of the pandemic in the 2020-2021 academic year, but are still temporary. So if you're offering online synchronous sessions, but those are still a temporary offering, that's what we're curious to find out. Or if you've created a new permanent course modality offerings based on some of the outcomes of this pandemic. So we can see some of the answers coming in here, similar to pre-pandemic, yep, and some new. So that's interesting. And then the temporary ones too, yeah. Okay, great. We'll give a few more seconds because I know it can take a little bit of time to load, but that's interesting that and at Penn State we have a mixture of these too. So most of ours have gone back to similar to pre-pandemic, but there are some temporary things in place, as well as considerations for the future that may not be permanent yet, but could be. Okay, thanks, Amy. So as we found that faculty were willing to adopt many of the strategies that were showcased during the transition to remote period, and strategies that were highlighted during the Engaging Student Series sessions that Amy talked about earlier. So we worked with faculty to focus on incorporating a lot of interactivity, as you saw in some of those in the video that Amy shared and some of the slides that she talked about. So how could we get those interactivity into online synchronous sessions? So we encouraged faculty to use chat, polling, annotations. We also used universal design for learning as a framework. We wanted to ensure that students had alternate means of participation, so creating opportunities for online asynchronous communication and participation. We encouraged faculty to increase their formative assessments throughout the semester, have more intentional group work, whether it was synchronous or asynchronous, and also ensuring that students had a variety of ways to interact. So we encouraged faculty to record sessions, offer self-paced opportunities, and also offer online synchronous sessions, in addition to having, the course office hours, things like that. So doing that increased accessibility for a lot of students and faculty, and we modeled that in our faculty development offerings as well. So how do we encourage continuation of these strategies? Well, one of the things that we were fortunate enough to have at Penn State is our research and evaluation team conducted an IRB approved university-wide survey of both students and faculty about the challenges they were facing during the transition to remote period and ways to support them. So then we had that data-backed research to use for our presentations and to use while we were offering these sessions. So the research and evaluation team did this university-wide survey at TLT, and their findings encouraged faculty to continue using those strategies that they were using during remote teaching. So when we went back to the in-person modes, a lot of faculty kept some of the strategies that they were using during the remote teaching period, such as offering virtual solutions, flexible options to access content, keeping communication channels open throughout the semester, a variety of them. So then the research and evaluation team partnered with the Student Disability Resources Office, and they surveyed their students about their unique learning needs. And their findings from that survey also indicated that their needs aligned with the students who took the community-wide teaching and learning survey. And Amy has posted the links to those results in chat, so you can look at them as your time allows, but there's some really interesting things there. They've created some really great infographics that kind of help summarize their findings, and we use that in a lot of our faculty engagement offerings currently. Lastly, all of these were linked to Penn State strategic planning efforts. So that was really fortunate too. So we could always tie what we were doing back to the strategic plan. We found this visual to be a really helpful representation of how people traditionally think of educational technology adoption. However, during the remote period, the remote teaching period, a lot of instructors were forced to move from mainstream to more of straddling the chasm. So there wasn't really an option for mainstream anymore. And because of that, that mentality kind of shifted, and we had an opportunity to encourage faculty to be more on the ed tech enthusiast side after that. And Amy will talk about some of those opportunities that arose in a little bit. But the weekend before we transitioned to remote, we held virtual office hours around the clock for people to come in and talk about how they could creatively transition their courses. I know we had faculty who were teaching ballroom dancing and sheep shearing and things like that in the ag courses. So we had the opportunity to be really creative with some of that stuff and their use of technology in their courses. And the Schreier Institute for Teaching Excellence, which is another department at Penn State, also held what they called put it into practice sessions, and the learning designers at TLT helped to support those. So we would schedule time with the faculty members for them to try out the technologies that they wanted to use or the strategies that they wanted to implement, and they could practice them with us before teaching them in their courses. And we've continued that as well beyond the remote teaching period because it was popular and helpful. So back to the collaborative notes, we want to ask you now, what successful remote teaching strategies did you see faculty incorporate into their courses during the remote teaching period? And how can you encourage faculty to keep using those strategies and technologies moving forward? So Amy's going to switch back over to the notes document, and we're under number 3 there. What did you find successful, and how do you encourage faculty to continue to use them currently? Oh, that's interesting. The DIY light boards. That's pretty cool. Yes, Padlet and Nearpod adoption too. We saw a lot of faculty who loved using Jamboard, yes. And continue to use it. Amy, I see you posted in chat, creative using the phone as a document camera. We had a lot of faculty who came up with really creative ways to teach on Zoom, especially when they had to write equations. Yeah, a lot of faculty that I've worked with too have recorded their lectures and posted them now, even though they're going back to an in-person mode, they're still recording and posting for their students, which is great. Miro is great too, yes. Madeline, we have a lot of faculty who've enjoyed working with Miro too. So as Amy mentioned earlier, please feel free to keep posting your responses in this document. If you think of something later, please revisit it. You'll have access to this in perpetuity. So you can come back and look at anything that's been added or use it in the future. So next, we're going to turn things back over to Amy to talk more about some lessons learned
Great. Thank you so much for that. And we had a one last edition of Quality Matter Guidelines for Design. And so I think that's also really important. They have kind of an adapted one with that quick pivot to remote, knowing that things couldn't be there. So not the whole quality matters aspects. And I think that that's so crucial. So I think after today's session, I'll add that for this part of our collaborative document for sure. And so for this, our next section, before we dive right into it, as far as lessons learned continued, one thing that we did pre-pandemic was to hold an annual conference kind of in person. Again, we're geographically dispersed, so people would travel throughout the whole state and be in person, and we'd have 500 plus faculty. And so we were interested from you, if you've done this type of style conference or university-wide kind of offering in the past, how are you holding a conference locally? So yes, a mixture, yes, 100% in person, yes, online, no, but in brainstorming, or if you haven't, just kind of do that last probably aspect of no, not thinking of doing so. Maybe because you haven't had it in the past. So again, if you go to slido.com and enter this code, we'll have one more question towards the end. And that way, it's kind of in lieu of Zoom polling, since we as presenters, we're not always sure what tools we're going to use to be nimble. Okay, so we have a nice variety, and I think it's going to change. And so I only have this set to one answer choice. I probably should have allowed for a few. So what we did, Sarah was in charge of it the first year. She did an absolutely amazing job. So in addition to pivoting and having faculty pivot, we were supposed to have that conference, I think like the week after we moved to online. So of course that didn't happen. Sarah, I think we ordered additional hand sanitizers to come in, because when we thought it could be a thing, but not as bad as what it was going to turn out to be. And so we turned it into an online synchronous series over the summer. We called it the TLT Summer Series. We had a few each week on Wednesdays for consistency, and that way it was spread out. So it was not a daunting commitment to faculty, especially during the summer after moving to remote, where they needed some time to do some self-care for sure. And so then our second time was to do the kind of that 2-day style event, online synchronous. And now this upcoming March, we are going back in person, but we are going to be doing that hybrid style event. So you can attend remotely. We're going to have all the sessions through Zoom, but again, presenting to an in-person audience and through Zoom at the same time. There's going to be some Zoom only sessions as well. And because of the nature, our kind of poster style sessions are only going to be in person. So kind of a mixture to really try to be equitable as possible, but we are going to digitize those discovery sessions, at least the content, so it's captured. And so again, this is anecdotally of our team, of our top lesson learned. But there's others that we covered already and others that we will next. But the top two was really that iterative approach and that quick turnaround style. It kind of goes into that rapid prototyping-esque philosophy of, okay, how can we make this better? Because we had to quickly do that. We're all kind of perfectionists. And so we really wanted to be perfect from the next time, but there were things out of our control. And the same thing for faculty and their courses, is you want it to be perfect, but given the time constraints, what can you do in that time? And then two, the interactivity. So we had we're even trying to model it today with our polling and our chat, as well as our collaborative notes. But a different take on collaborative notes, which was in that video, is using what's called Google Slides. And so we would always make sure that they would have this link before they got sent out to separate breakout rooms. And then we would always have the prompt of what they're talking about in the note section down here. And we would be consistent and have them in the same group throughout. So this is group 1, and they would come here 3 times. So BOR is breakout room 1, like the first time, breakout room 2 the second, and then breakout room 3 the third time. And so that way they would take their notes, and then once they came back from each breakout group, we would share out optionally about what they learned. And when we first did this, we would, as part of the registration form, we would say, hey, are you willing to lead a group? That way it's not kind of haphazard and say, hey, pick a group member to represent your group, kind of those awkward conversations. So by having kind of a faculty attendee lead already commit to that, we made sure the breakout groups were organized in that manner and that they were in each their own. So that was really useful. It took a lot of behind the scenes work and 2 co-presenters. If we only have 1 presenter, we don't do that because you can't juggle organizing who's going to be in each breakout room without knowing who's attending while also presenting. So that's just one element that we did. One thing that has been even in our notes even today is more accessibility and more inclusivity. And so that choice of modalities, we had what's called new faculty orientation, and we did a syllabus boot camp and Canvas introduction with a pedagogy spin. We were going to have in-person offerings and online. Actually, no one signed up for in-person. It was all an online attendance was actually really, really good. And so we've sprinkled that choice and throughout, and now we do have some people coming in person for sure. But we do have that mixture. The other thing that we do too is faculty tend to have teaching loads either on Tuesdays and Thursdays together or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we always try to make sure that we offer each session twice, once on a Monday, Wednesday, and then the other on a Tuesday or Thursday. So that way it's more equitable. We also try to have it be during the lunch hour for adjuncts, so that way they could do that. And I know even as an adjunct myself, I attend online offerings during my lunch break for sure. The next is faculty voices. And so we've always tried to do that, but having faculty examples in our aspects have been really crucial in getting permission, of course. But because we've had exposure to a larger variety of faculty, including ballroom dancing, sheep shearing, we've been able to kind of add to our repertoire, which has been really, really useful. And that helps by giving them multiple perspectives. So again, we really try to have voices from tenure track faculty, non-tenure track faculty, adjunct faculty, again, from various colleges at University Park, but then throughout the state at all of our 24 Commonwealth campuses to have kind of that equal representation, both in Eastern Pennsylvania and Western Pennsylvania. And two, one thing that we've now added kind of post-pandemic is trying to see unique ways to add faculty voice. And so one thing that we've added is kind of our informal guest speaker. And so we invite a faculty member, we give them the slides in advance if they want to take a peek at it, and they come during the session and they add their perspectives of our content kind of ad hoc in the chat. So it's low preparation time, but we've found through feedback already that the attendees find it so meaningful. The faculty member who is that informal guest speaker really likes making those connections, and they appreciate the low commitment for preparation, especially with burnout and more. As far as other examples for accessibility and inclusive is image representation. And so we really want to have that be a big aspect, and we'll give you some resources on the next slide. But even from my adjunct teaching perspective, I actually use this image on the right during my online synchronous course, and this person has vitiligo, and I kind of just taught normal as is, just to have that representation. And after my class session, a student stayed on and she was in tears, and I was like, oh no, what's wrong? Let's get you the support resources that you need. And she's like, this is the first time I've ever seen someone with my skin condition as part of my educational experience. So I've always seen her from the neck up on Zoom, but she showed her hands and she had vitiligo on her hands. And so it was a very touching moment, and she gave her permission for me to share it, just to show the importance that something's as simplistic as putting an image with someone with vitiligo can have a great impact on a student. And so I think that that's so crucial. And then to not just images, but what are references as part of our faculty development, make sure they have representation from a wide variety of researchers and research papers and authors of them out there. I found a source yesterday that I want to test out that actually, if you put a whole bibliography, it checks if it's male or female authors from a database, as well as kind of their probably race or historical background. And so I want to test it out first before I go through it, but if it's valuable, I will add it to our notes for sharing out for sure. But from the image perspective, just really quickly, I wanted to go over some of these. So they have, oh, Slido doesn't like this. So I'll bring it up in a different window and bring that over. So one place to look for images is called Unsplash. They have Creative Commons images, and they have one for people of all sizes. And so they have one that's curated by Office Collection, Outdoor Fun, and more. For women in technology, Flickr has a whole other section, which has some really great Black, Indigenous, people of color pictures in technology. And if you go through this list, there's a whole bunch. So there's ones that are certain races. There's ones that include those who have a disability. There includes ones who are from the gender spectrum. And so I would encourage you to look at all of these in your leisure. And so those are just some ways to add some inclusive imagery. So now we want to kind of go back to you all and think about what, from your perspective, what is the most important lesson learned? And then how can you make your programming more accessible and inclusive? And I know we've kind of hinted at that in some earlier aspects. And so that is here for the lessons learned. So we'll give everyone a few moments. That's great, a file scanner to identify accessibility issues. Wonderful. And then in the chat, we have having the tutorials on SharePoint PDF, videos, and links, differentiate SharePoint pages were organized by topic and user, instructor versus student for quick search. These resources were linked with every UP Moodle course, allowing answers to questions within their courses 24 hours a day. That's amazing. That's awesome. Blackboard Ally, yeah, so I have that as part of my adjunct role. is helpful to find accessibility issues and uses for sure. And then enroll in and complete your online student orientation course. Great suggestion. Have them be the student to experience that. All wonderful stuff. Thanks so much. So we have one final Slido poll as we think about moving forward, is what faculty development modalities are you offering this current semester for spring? And this is select all that apply. So you can select multiple ones. So again, if you go to slido.com and enter 696633, you could go ahead and participate in the poll. So a mixture for sure. And I think because everyone's a little bit different about how much they've gone back, we kind of assumed in person would be at the bottom, but it's good that we're making some traction in that area for sure. So thank you all for participating in that. So to gear towards wrapping things up, but we'll stay after for questions for sure, is moving forward. I think there's been a lot of recognition and importance of our work as faculty developers or instructional designers or learning designers. And so at some locations, even at Penn State, it's like, oh, they're the creators of the online courses. They're kind of the button pushers or the tech experts, not the pedagogy. Thankfully for TLT, we've been seen in that light already before. But I think as a broader community, I think that's been happening for sure. The next thing is the balance of faculty burnout. They're helping their students. Sometimes they're saying that this last semester and this semester has been even harder than even last year. And so we have to make sure that, just like we don't want to force our students to turn on cameras, that we're not forcing our faculty to turn on their Zoom cameras, being appreciative that they're taking their time out of everything to commit to coming to these offerings, etc. Meet the faculty where they are. So we talked about the chasm, Sarah did. And so many people, we've had a lot of exposure to new faculty, some who didn't use the learning management system in the past. And so they started putting files and then moved into quizzes. And so those faculty said, okay, I did Zoom polling, but how do I do polling of my students in class? And so even that, it was, okay, well, we have Top Hat, let's learn that, and to meet them where they are, and then to do that segmented change, which is the next one. And then I think the biggest thing, especially we're not out of the woods yet. We're still doing a lot. Our faculty are doing a lot, we're doing a lot. And so doing our work with what we can, given the time constraints, going back to the, hey, I know we try to get the perfect faculty development offering out there, but knowing that there are time management constraints of how much time you're allotted to create things, the resources that are out there. So trying to keep that in mind so that we don't burn out ourselves as much. And then thinking about in-person engagements. So for us, it was kind of low attendance. We've seen some trickling up, and again, we've actually have a lot of people registered for our conference in March. We're excited, and people are nervous, but excited to be in person. And so I think that also is important to enjoy the in-person opportunities, but to plan for them accordingly. And so we're planning to make sure that we have messaging that's out there of what the day is going to look like. We're going to have boxed lunches instead of a buffet style. We're going to have opportunities where if you don't want to sit at a table or socially distant, that you could kind of be in the hallway and certain other areas to sit. If it was not March, we'd even have opportunities to sit outside to eat, but not in the cold weather. Again, offer multiple modalities. We know that things change. Ourselves, we might have to quarantine, or we might have children or parents or family members we take care of. So then to always have that backup plan of your co-presenters is crucial too, in addition to offering those modalities of options of attendees. I think embrace the uncomfortableness in it all. And so are you okay with a handshake, fist bump, things of that nature, and to communicate that for sure. And then continue everything that we've already mentioned prior. And so we're going to kind of combine this question with our next, just for time's sake. We weren't sure how much people would want to be communicative, and it's great that you have been, but we want to be cognizant on time. So we're going to combine this with our next two. So in the collaborative notes document, which Sarah will put in the chat, we're going to do two sections. So moving forward and brainstorming. So how has your perspective of your work changed, and how will your in-person engagements change as a result of the past 2 years? But then also think of ways to carry the innovation forward. And we want to kind of see where you think about and all of that. So we're moving on to both this and this. So feel free to answer some or one or the other? Yeah, so virtual work can be and is very productive. So we have a hybridized team where people come into the office, but it's different. And so we're having everyone come in together on next Tuesday just to focus and say, hey, let's all be there in person. But knowing that we have varying schedules and we want to have someone in the office at any point, that it might not always work. Yeah, and two, some people really want to connect in person, and so having those conversations with peers, with faculty, is so important with what they want to do and what is their preference.
Yeah, I've over the years I've had faculty that they love to perform in front of an audience. You know, they'd rather, you know, cut out a bunch of other stuff, but they need that. You know.
Yeah, great. Yeah, a lot of people were surprised at working from home. You know, even the difference between extroverts and introverts and all of that. Wonderful. Great. Well, thanks so much, everyone. So I know that carrying the innovation forward could be a little bit harder to do. And of course, we came up with some ideas, but even how to get buy-in. And so one thing that we wanted to point out within the document is oftentimes, even when we talk about things, faculty, especially tenure track, might say, well, where's the research? So same with administration, sometimes it's like, show me the research. And so I think by having the articles that we posted earlier, as far as what are our own student needs, what are our faculty needs, there's some really great published articles about kind of faculty development with COVID. And so they're linked here, but then we also kind of have them synthesized as far as the thematic areas and some key quotes and takeaways in each of those articles. So there's 3 that are key, or 4, I lied, 4. But then there's a whole bunch more that we didn't do those thematic ones because we really wanted to kind of pick our top 4 and say, hey, these are some really great quotes, but if you're really interested, there's more for you there. So being cognizant of time and wrapping up on time or a minute early, we just wanted to thank you for coming today. We have our contact information, and what we'll be posting in the chat is a link to our slides and a folder that has our slides and our collaborative document. And of course, you could always reach out to us via email. So thank you all so much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or let us know.
We were talking before we got started. The one thing that I really learned because of how we had to scramble was we really, well, one, I never want to have to go through that again. And the way to do that is really make sure every faculty member has to at least know the basics of teaching online. They need both the button pushing part, I call it, but also the pedagogical part, because I probably lost, a week off my lifespan trying to cram all that in the space of actually 2 weeks. And yeah, we don't want to do it again. Therefore, it's imperative that we make this an integral part of what every faculty member has to learn. Whether they teach online at that point doesn't matter. Maybe 2 years from now, it will matter. It'll make everybody's life a lot easier.
No, yeah, thank you for that. And We kind of use a term that's been coined as not digital literate, but digitally fluent, and be ready for the unexpected. And just like even pre-pandemic, what to prepare students for the next generation of jobs that don't exist yet. Same with faculty, knowing that we're going to have these modalities, but maybe there's going to be others coming down the pipeline that we don't even know of. So I think being nimble and is crucial for sure. Are there any questions or other comments?
I think we have closure.
Okay, well, thank you
Sarah and
all.
Amy. Hey, thanks. Certainly, I think all of us will go through that reflective process, looking back over the past couple of years and how we could do better, avoid things, and so forth. So, thank you much. And to everybody, we've got another session at the top of the hour.
Thank you.